Alrighty, so following the Hungarian Grand Prix, we've now hit the dreaded Formula 1 summer break, which means there'll be no action until Spa-Francorchamps, and so I decided that this would be a good time to give my thoughts about the first half of the season and what has been a really fantastic season for Formula 1 with some superb races, and Hungary was almost certainly a fantastic race as well, probably the best one of the season so far. So this is my mid-season review. We'll start by going through all the teams and all the drivers, and we'll start with the Constructors' Championship leaders, which changed hands this weekend. And we'll start with Mercedes, and they've taken 4 wins and 10 other podiums so far this season, and they're currently leading the Constructors' standings with a slender margin over at Red Bull, and I've given them an 8 out of 10. I've given this because I feel like whilst they are doing superbly well, they are leading the championship, perhaps they might want to be further ahead, but Red Bull have put up a strong fight so far, and so I'm very much looking forward to what should be a gripping second half of the season. And for their drivers, I've given Lewis Hamilton a 9 out of 10. He's taken 4 wins, he's had 8 podiums as well, and he made mistakes in both Imola and Azerbaijan, which was unfortunate, but it's great to see 2 fantastic drivers of the sport going head to head, and we'll get on to Max Verstappen very soon. So Hamilton's got a 9 out of 10 because Max Verstappen is really pushing him, and Hamilton's really having to fight back. And obviously this has boiled over slightly, but no, it's great to see 2 champions of the sport really going for it. The young gun Max Verstappen versus the established force, and hopefully he gets his 100th Grand Prix win pretty soon, obviously on 99. Valtteri Bottas, currently I've given him a 6.5. He's got 6 podiums, but he's also not third in the driver's standings, which is probably where Mercedes would want him to be. But then again, he has had some pretty poor luck. He was stripped of a podium in Monaco. He's had a pretty difficult time this season, but he's not been performing too badly, and I thought the last month for him was actually pretty solid until he decided to miss his breaking point in Hungary. So I would have given him a 7 out of 10, but he's given a 6.5. I think as F1 fans we're quite hard on Valtteri Bottas, and so I think a 6.5 is fair, and it'll be interesting to see what Mercedes do with their drivers for next season. So next up, Red Bull. They've taken 6 wins, 4 other podiums, and come second in the Constructors at the moment, and I've also given them an 8 out of 10. I feel like they've made very good steps forward since last season, but I still think Perez is perhaps dragging them down a little bit. They do seem to have the quickest car, or Max Verstappen's car seems to be the quickest, but Sergio Perez's car doesn't seem to be quite up there. He's often not quite in that 4th or 3rd spot, which is where they need him to be, and so they've been given an 8 out of 10. Max Verstappen has been given a 9 out of 10, equal with Lewis Hamilton. He's taken 5 wins. Of course, he was stripped of that win in Baku, which then Hamilton also managed to lose that win in Baku, and so I think it's been fantastic to see the Hamilton-Verstappen battle. Verstappen says they're going to race hard. Hopefully they'll continue to race fair. The Silverstone incident, you guys have already seen my thoughts on that. I think it was a racing incident, and I don't want to see this whole over-the-top blown up reaction. It's racing, these things happen, they're professional competitors. Whilst Red Bull's reaction was perhaps a bit immature after that accident, they can be rightly disappointed about Hungary, and I think Max will be back stronger after the summer break. After 2 disappointing rounds, it's good that it's not a double header with something now, and they've got time to reset. I think Red Bull will be very, very strong second half of the season. Sergio Perez, 7 out of 10, 1 win, and he's only had 1 other podium. It's been good, but then it's not been good, and it's been good, and it's not been good, so 7 out of 10 seems fair. I've given him perhaps a slightly generous rating, maybe a 6.5, but I think 7 out of 10 for Perez, and he's also fighting for that 3rd place in the driver's standing. Now, just before we get on to Ferrari and McLaren, if you are enjoying this video, make sure to subscribe to the channel and give the video a like. It really, really helps me out, and hopefully we'll have a great second half of the season. Right, on to McLaren. 3 podiums, 8.5 out of 10. Lando Norris is going to get a 9.5 out of 10. He has been stellar for McLaren. He's taken 3 podiums. He's currently 3rd in the standings. He's really been on fire this season, and going into the season break, McLaren will be over the moon with Lando Norris being 3rd in the standings. Daniel Ricciardo, he's had a tricky start to the season. There have been some consistent results in there. He was also extremely unlucky in Hungary, because if he'd just been a couple couple of car lengths further on, he would have easily got second place and could have won the race over Ocon. So I'm giving Daniel Ricciardo a 6 out of 10. I think he struggled, but once he's getting to grips with the car slightly more, I hope that he does better second half of the season. Ferrari, 3 podiums as well. They're equal on points with McLaren going into the second half of the season. That is if Sebastian Vettel's disqualification stands. And so, yeah, the 3 podiums is also if Vettel's disqualification stands. And they've been given a 7.5 out of 10 because they've taken a good step forward, but they're still not quite the front runners that they once were. Leclerc, a brilliant pole in Monaco, followed by the gearbox failure after he made that crash. And also he's had a Silverstone masterclass to take his first podium of the season. So I've given him an 8 out of 10. He's driving very, very well indeed. Carlos Sainz also got an 8 out of 10. 2 podiums. Podium in Monaco was sensational and he is adapting so well to that car. I'm very, very impressed with Carlos Sainz. So he gets an 8 out of 10 from me. Alpine next up. They've taken 1 win. I'm being slightly disappointed with their pace. It's a little bit hot and cold, but 7 out of 10. They've taken a win, which is huge for them. And Alonso, he's been superb. Brilliant return for the champ. He won them the race in Hungary, fending off Hamilton, because you saw in those last 3 laps, Hamilton, once he was past Alonso and Sainz, he finished the race less than a second behind Vettel. 2 laps and he'd won the race. So Fernando Alonso, he's been superb and he's put in some great performances all season, really dragging that Alpine car up the field. And I also thought the Silverstone sprint, Alonso was just mesmerising. 8 out of 10. Esteban Ocon now, he has been quite inconsistent, but he really deserved his day in the sun. It's been hard graft from the Frenchman, and 7.5 out of 10 in Hungary. He was fantastic. And whilst Q1 exits in Austria were disappointment, he has been very, very good in some races. And so 7.5 out of 10 is probably fair. So Aston Martin now, they've taken 1, maybe 2 podiums, barring Vettel's disqualification. I've given them a 6 out of 10 because they really struggled with the new regulations, and I think that they were expecting to be far higher up the field, perhaps more in the McLaren-Ferrari battle than the Alpine-Alfa Tauri battle that they're currently in. Although Vettel took a while to get going, he's very much now on song, and if he is denied that podium in Hungary, that will be oh so cruel. But I've given him an 8 out of 10, and his off-track work continues to be fantastic. And Lance Stroll, he's had some bad luck, notably Baku, but he's also made some bad mistakes, also compromising his season. He did a Valtteri Bottas down into turn 1 at Hungary, was also penalised for it. So I've given him a 6.5 out of 10. It's not really a huge amount to say on Lance Stroll's season. He's been up there with Vettel for some of it, but some of it he's kind of been off it compared to his 4-time world champion teammate. So he's holding his own and not doing too badly. Alfa Tauri, they've got very good qualifying pace. They've made a good step forward towards the midfield. So I've also given them a 7.5 out of 10. I think that their 1 podium from Gasly in Azerbaijan was fantastic. And moving on to Pierre Gasly, he is driving the wheels off that car. He's great in qualifying. Podium in Baku was sensational. How he fought off Charles Leclerc, the pole sitter for that race, don't forget. And so I've given him an 8.5 out of 10. And Yuki Tsunoda has had a few accidents, but he's shown quite a lot of good pace, like in Bahrain. I think he needs to really improve his qualifying and his consistency. Perhaps another year in Formula 2 wouldn't have been too bad. He's proving his worth. He fought quite well in Hungary, but I've given him a 6 out of 10 because he does need to iron out those mistakes. Williams next up in the constructors standings, and they've made a great step forward. Hungary points were a huge bonus. I've given them an 8 out of 10. Russell has been quite sensational, especially in qualifying. Race pace a little bit off, but he's been fantastic in qualifying, and so that car is doing well underneath George Russell, and he deserved his points in Hungary, so he's given an 8.5 out of 10. Latifi, well, he's been quite slow initially, but he's up to speed in Hungary and picked up more points than George Russell in Hungary, which is quite amusing, but both of them were so good in that Grand Prix. Overall, I do think his seat is in danger though, so he does need to bump up his performances second half of the season, but he gets a 6.5 out of 10 from me. Next up, Alfa Romeo. They're now behind Williams and they're failing to capitalise on races where they really need to capitalise in the way that Williams did. There's unsafe releases, there's penalties being thrown all around, and I've given them a 4 out of 10. They're going backwards really. Whilst Williams are really developing their car, they're going backwards, Alfa Romeo. Giovinazzi, he's doing okay, but his car just really isn't very good and he's being thrown around a bit by the team. He's got a pretty average performance. I'm going to say 5.5 out of 10. And Kimi Räikkönen, he's being beaten by Giovinazzi slightly in qualifying. He's struggling with his car as well. There's not really a lot to say about Alfa Romeo. 5.5 out of 10. And finally, Haas F1 team. Whilst I was at Silverstone, you really got a gauge of just how far off the pace Haas were. It's a transitional phase for them. They're not competitive at all. 4 out of 10. Schumacher, well, he got into Q2 in France and then he crashed, which was very unfortunate for him. Again, few too many mistakes, but there's a real talent underneath that helmet. For brilliantly against Max Verstappen in Hungary, and when he's in a top team, he will be fantastic. But for the moment, needs to iron out some mistakes, so 6.5 out of 10. And Nikita Mazepin, after a disastrous first 4 rounds, he's picked up the pace a bit. He made a good overtake on Mick at Silverstone to win the battle of who's going to finish second last. He was unlucky in Hungary to be blasted when he was in the pit lane. 5.5 out of 10 for him. And then for the season overall, I think it's shaping up to be an absolute classic. We've had some thrilling races in there. The championship fight just gets spicier every time you read something else that Toto Wolff or Christian Horner has said. Ferrari and McLaren are level on points, which is superb. The battle for who's going to finish 5th between the teams that begin with A is superb. And can Alfa Romeo catch Williams for 8th place in the standings? It's all shaping up to be a tremendous season. And if you did enjoy this video, make sure to give it a like and let me know your thoughts on the middle of the season in the comments section below. Subscribe if you are new around here and you want to see Formula 1 content every week, and I will catch you in the next one. Later, guys.